Hello everyone, my name is Gibran Vita. I'm gonna be talking about the environmental impact of human needs and need satisfaction, and also about the impact of lifestyle changes featuring green consumption and sufficiency lifestyles. And all of this within the framework of clarifying some opportunities towards sustainable well-being. So I'm gonna do this by showcasing three cases of recent research. The first one is about the carbon emission of human needs and their satisfaction. The case two is about modeling scenarios of green consumption and sufficiency lifestyles. And the number three is measuring the impact and the well-being of sustainability activists. So to make a case, can lifestyles influence impact and well-being? Well, that's what we will find out today. And the three papers have a particularly relevance at different leverage points when it comes to opportunities to encourage lifestyle changes. So the first one is here more speaking to the needs and wants on the individual level. Second one more about critical mass and the changes in ownership and consumption. And the third one is focusing on the potential of grassroots initiatives to break up or enhance some of the personal context variables that normally influence consumption and impact. The research uses a mixture of methods, but one of the overarching methods is multi-regional input-output models. This one enables us to calculate consumption-based footprints. In this case, we use XIO-base. So for those of you who are not familiar, the reason why we like to use this is because we can calculate life cycle upstream emissions, energy, and resources of consumption products. So for example, you think about your phone, maybe some metals were extracted in South America and Central Africa. They were sent to China to be put into a phone. Then India maybe sent some software, some packaging before it got sent to the USA where it was consumed. So in these methods we are able to estimate all the upstream water, land, energy emissions or toxic emissions that occurred in the story of producing that phone. So in paper number one, we make an effort to provide a framework to connect the economy, resources, and human well-being. The assumption is that we have underlying capitals in our society, cultural, natural, and social. And then we withdraw from those capitals through strategies, can be the political system, energy system, and so on, in order to create different satisfiers that will eventually satisfy individual human needs, which make up well-being. This is based on the taxonomy by Max Neef, Human Scale Sustainable Development. And the key message here is that the needs are fixed and universal and they are non-negotiable. So we cannot really change those, but we can really choose the satisfiers, the strategies, and how much capital they rely on, or which kind of capital. It can be more material or less material, market or non-market, and so on. So for Max Neef, the needs are fixed and they can occur in different dimensions of existence. This in the middle are the satisfiers that occur at different dimensions of existence. So in this research, because we focus on consumption and on the market consumption, we are limited to explore satisfiers within having and interacting, so built environment and so on. So what we try to do is relate the consumption products to the needs they might relate to, and then transform that into a matrix and prepare it for input-output calculations. More information in the paper. The main results show the global carbon footprint, and in different classifications. To the left is like the basic economic classification, consumables, durables, and services. Then here in the middle, more consumption oriented classification, housing, transport, and so on. And then here to the right is how they look in terms of fundamental human needs. So we find that about half of the emissions are associated to subsistence and protection, and then an equal portion divided between identity, creation, freedom, and leisure, and just a very marginal amount to understanding and participation. So this is a global picture, and we calculated for every country as well. So the next step is to assess how satisfied those needs are across nations and whether there is a relationship with the footprint invested in those needs. So we have satisfaction here on the y-axis and footprint on the x-axis, and we test different curve fits. We try to use the three different type of indicators. One is subjective satisfaction, like freedom to choose, when people respond subjectively. The other one is importance or values, how valuable is that type of need in a given society. And then the third one is more objective, normally conducted by a third party, like in this case institutional freedom. So we test several curve fits and then see which one fits better, or whether there is no relationship at all. And we ended up using 35 indicators from 12 different databases. So these are the hypotheses that we tested to see whether consumption relates to footprint and well-being, if there's any correlation, and if there is, what is a shape, if it's a linear, if it's a threshold, if it's a Kuznets curve or a diminishing return, perhaps a constant, or no relationship at all, because need satisfaction depends on completely different things rather than consumption or footprint. From the 35 indicators that we evaluated, we only found 15 to have a statistical relationship with the footprint of the need, out of which 11 were objective indicators, such as inverse fertility rate or child survival rate, access to sanitation, and so on. 2 of them were values, and 2 of them were subjective. That was the case for freedom to choose and satisfaction with creativity. The rest of the indicators did not show any significant relationship. 20 of them did not show any relationship at all. For example, the case of protection, which was tested with more than 3 indicators because it's very multidimensional. We see that most of protection indicators remain unsatisfied despite of protection taking a very big share of the footprint, meaning that trying to satisfy protection through market consumption is far from a guarantee, or is not really associated with the satisfaction. In the second paper, we started by going around Europe, gathering visions for the future from different countries and different type of stakeholders. Then from those visions, we built scenarios of green consumption and sufficiency, adjust parameters in the multi-regional input-output model, and then evaluate the outcome of that hypothetical scenario, and complement a little bit about quality of life implications through literature review. We ended up with 36 different scenarios for which we tested the outcomes of carbon, toxicity, land, and water across different consumption domains. The percentage here indicates the mitigation potential with respect to current European consumption. The numbers here in yellow mark when the change is not big enough to be very conclusive, and certainly the implementation would matter. I find that choosing, for example, natural fibers doesn't make a very big difference, but choosing durable fashion, as in second-hand clothing and more durable clothing, makes a difference. You can read in the paper all the details about what is behind each scenario, the description, and the parameters that are implied in modeling this scenario. The numbers in red indicate a potential risk of backfire. For example, a policy of intensive repairing and renovation for seeking energy efficiency might reduce carbon, but might also increase toxicity or need more land. When it comes to diet, naturally, the more you move out of animal-based food, the better the higher than mitigation potential. Still, this kind of modeling signals potential risk, for example, in supplying a healthy vegan diet might lead to some increases in land. That's why in reality it matters to choose the products and the substitutes very wisely. The food and the energy scenarios that have an asterisk were modeled through physical layers of kilocalories or kilowatt hours to overcome the limitation of input-output modeling, which is in monetary units very often. When it comes to sufficiency of food, the food sufficiency, which means eating just the necessary calories, supplying just the necessary calories, has the most potential, even more than minimizing waste. And important that many of these scenarios can be combined to yield even larger potential. In manufactured products, sharing and repairing has the most potential, but also reducing the household chemicals and plastic has some potential. And being a offline minimalist or having more durable appliances, which means just minimizing gadgets at the end or having more durable gadgets, have some interesting potentials. When it comes to transport, of course, only biking and walking only has the most gains. But this is an input-output model, so it doesn't really replace the bottom-up transport models. However, it allows us to test many scenarios in a consistent framework to provide an indication of what can be interesting or what can be a potential risk or where can we look further. Same with services. Here we evaluated the community services scenario implies that we reduce leisure, entertainment, and other type of services and reshift towards more cultural and membership and other type of services. And non-market services assumes that we supply a lot of the services ourselves outside of the market. In the housing scenarios, passive housing more or less correlates with other literature in terms of mitigation potential. But because the participants were also involved in eco-villages, we tested the kind of a pre-industrial eco-village and also a more high-tech eco-village and what could be the potential implications. Of course, renewable electricity for housing or for transport here have a backfire of they can reduce carbon, but they might increase land and water. So this is the kind of warnings that we would like to communicate of. Another advantage of input-output is that we are able to see the changes in the global south or in the producing countries. So transport, housing, and services, changes in these domains have more benefits inside Europe, but changes in food, clothing, manufactured products have actually spare more resources in the producing countries, which is often developing countries or the global south. In the last paper, we focus on the potential of grassroots initiatives to reduce impact and promote well-being. So we rolled out an extensive survey asking for consumption and lifestyle type of questions to normal control citizens, control groups, but also to members of a very wide range of initiatives with the common ground that all of them are involved in sustainability. So we found a difference. We found immediately that initiative members have a little bit less footprint, mostly in food and clothing, not very clear in housing and transport. This is just descriptive statistics. The next step to really isolate the effect of belonging to an initiative and also control for all those socio-demographic factors that influence consumption was to set up a regression model where we tested the effect of joining an initiative. Here, the numbers that cross this line means that there's no statistical significance. So yes, we confirmed that the joining an initiative or people who are in an initiative have 15% less carbon footprint, 43% less carbon footprint of food, 86% less carbon footprint of clothing, but surprisingly the housing and the transport are not statistically significant. This really indicates about the infrastructure lock-ins that even people with certain values or certain attitudes might be able to have certain agency over food and clothing and so on, but housing and transport are very hard to overcome. Despite the fact that initiative members actually behave differently, using less electricity, less cars, traveling less in general, and walking more, the efforts were not enough to actually yield significant results in reduction in these domains of transport and housing. But interestingly, the initiative members seem to break the higher income, higher footprint relationship. This is a very common relationship that we find in literature, and we confirmed here with a 27% proportionality between increases in income and increases in footprint. But this was not found for initiative members, meaning that they can earn more, but it doesn't necessarily translate to consumption or footprint. We were also interested in knowing if this lower consumption had any impact on the well-being, but quite the contrary. We found grassroots initiative members to be 11 to 13% more happy in general using the life satisfaction scale. There's many mechanisms and many levels at which the grassroots initiatives enable a more broader sustainability transition. One main mechanism is social learning, where people install new norms and share new skills and create basically a new reality. And it works at a personal context when individuals feel more motivated, more empowered, and so on. At a social context, people create networks, people create other kind of discourses, and also a technical context where people, members of initiatives, create new technologies or resist planned obsolescence or simply innovate and become prosumers. These are the links to the papers where they are openly available as a preprint. Otherwise, you can look for them in the journal if you have access, or you can email me if you're interested in them. We can conclude that lifestyles can indeed influence impact and well-being, whether it is by creating eco-efficient satisfiers of needs, upscaling different lifestyle changes to mitigate environmental impact and climate change, or by creating new opportunities for people to reduce impact and enhance their well-being through grassroots initiatives or different kind of organizations. Thank you so much for your attention.